It's an absolute mega exclusive that nobody else has at this time, and India today has accessed satellite imagery from Planet Labs of the Galwan Valley bloodshed, the spot where India and China engaged in the most brutal face-off that has resulted in the deaths of at least 20 Indian army men and an unspecified number of people from the Chinese army side as well. Here is that full exclusive report. Ladakh's new mountain of blood, that's what it's being called. As the body count piles up and India comes to terms with the brutal, premeditated bloodletting by the Chinese army, India today now shows you the battle zone in cold, stupefying detail. Take a close look at these satellite images from Planet Labs. Photographs taken less than 24 hours after the carnage on the night of June the 15th, capturing in stunning detail the full truth. What you're looking at is the first visual detail of where the Indian and Chinese troops brawled to the death. What these images show is that despite being massively outnumbered by Chinese troops and losing at least 20 men, the Indian side is holding its ground. High-resolution satellite images of Ground Zero from June the 16th show a massive continuing build-up by the Chinese side despite the de-escalation agreement at the Lieutenant General level 10 days prior. These satellite images from Planet Labs, reviewed by India today, nail the flashpoint between the two sides, Ladakh's new Himalayan blood zone. And here's what we can tell you about these images. Take a close look at this image from the Galwan Valley, where it clearly shows Chinese troops outnumbering Indian troops. An intense Chinese build-up is seen from the China side. At least 200 military vehicles are seen on the ground on the Chinese side, this despite a clear promise to disengage. Well, despite being outnumbered by the Chinese troops and facing horrific casualties, the images prove that Indian troops are holding their position strongly. The Indian Army has officially confirmed at least 20 Indian casualties and several injured in what was a bloody and brutal medieval-style brawl. And these images establish and prove China's direct treachery. Less than 10 days after agreeing to disengage and de-escalate, these images from the Galwan Patrol Point 14 show that China intensified its troop build-ups amidst the de-escalation process. If you look closely, you can see that the Chinese troops are distributed in three parts. The forward part is followed by two trails directed towards the line of actual control. The image from Tuesday shows hundreds of military vehicles lining up on the Chinese side, as well as encampments distributed in the middle and backward parts of the Chinese trail. On Tuesday, India today broke the biggest military story since Kargil. And now we bring you the first images of the battlefield and how China had no intentions to de-escalate. With Ankit Kumar in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today. Let's go straight across to India Today's Gaurav Sawant joining us live from Leh. He's the first journalist to reach Ladakh on the back of this huge escalation in hostilities between India and China. I want to start with the immediate story, Gaurav. What is the situation you're hearing about at Patrol Point 14? What we can tell our viewers is that major generals from both sides are meeting there as we speak, not very far from where you're standing and reporting, to try and diffuse the situation, because even 36 hours later, it is still very, very tense in the Galwan Valley.
Shiv, there is tension, palpable tension across the region. What's happened in one area could well happen in others, and this is where the escalation in terms of dialogue is now at the level of the division commanders. The commanding officers were in touch, but that is where the Chinese, as part of the deceit, they murdered our commanding officer, Colonel Babu, and 20 soldiers, both of artillery and of that infantry battalion. That's point one. Point two, the escalation of dialogue went to the level of the brigade commanders. Now it's come to the level of the division commanders. And the effort is, from what I'm picking up from sources, is to ensure that there is no repeat. There is a buffer zone that's created. Either side communicate, leaving a buffer zone, so there is no scope for contact. And then there is forward movement depending on what higher direction comes, whether it comes from the level of the division commanders, the corps commanders, or is it taken up then at the diplomatic level or at the level of the national security advisors. We still do not know. But the effort is to ensure that either it gets diffused at this level or the corps commanders level, but there is no brawl once again. But Shiv, while all of this, India follows all these rules to the T, it's the Chinese who carry out deceit. I mean, look, they said we'll talk about disengagement, and they brought in more troops, they brought in more armored personal carriers, they brought in more resources. They said they will disengage, and then they attacked our forces. They not only attacked, it wasn't just like a spur of the moment flare up in that particular area. It escalated down to where the battalion was located and elsewhere. So this just goes on to show it was premeditated murder from Chinese side, Shiv.
Gaurav, stay with me. Let's listen into some of the big reactions that have come in on India Today's mega exclusive. The first satellite pictures depicting the mountain of blood, where the Indian army has lost 20 men and counting.
Chinese will be saying something and doing something. I think the Chinese have only bought time to get themselves mobilized. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're holding ground, it's mountain warfare. They cannot, even if they do what they are wanting to do, they know for sure military confrontation is going to be extremely, extremely difficult for China. China wouldn't be able to rise again, because world over, China will be condemned very, very badly. The kind of behavior that we saw on the night of 15/16 itself is indicative of China's deceitful conduct and absolutely a behavior which is unpardonable. I would say it's absolutely unpardonable. Nobody behaves like this. When you are there for discussion, when you are there for talks, even in the worst of case, you will never ever behave. You will disengage, and if you wish to fight again, you will go back again, fight. But not when somebody is there to see through the disengagement. You indulge into this kind of an activity in which we lose 20 lives. And even if we say that they've lost 40 lives, 50 lives, 60 lives, that is their conduct and that is their behavior. The fact that we were able to stand up to them and be able to give it back to them in the same coin that they deserve is indicative of one thing, that don't mess around. We are not messing around with you. You don't mess around with us.
The Chinese came in with the intention of engaging in a limited war with India. They came in with requisite forces who included and were backed by a requisite number of forces in depth. They had weapon systems, they had missile batteries, so they were prepared for war. And yet in India, for a month and a half, we have been trying to obscure the reality. And now suddenly, because of the violent confrontation